Hey everybody, Ryan F. MTG here, and today we got some big Teppen news. They are doing a balance update, so that means there's some nerfs and buffs happening, and it says sometime in February updates. So that's awesome. We haven't seen tons of balance updates in Teppen's lifespan. We've seen two. Over the summer, Nergigante got nerfed a little bit, and then a couple months ago, we got a lot of nerfs and buffs to hero arts and cards, and that was a lot of fun. That really shook up the metagame and made things seem a little bit more even overall. So I'm really, really excited what the Teppen team has to offer in the form of nerfs and buffs this time around. However, when I first looked at this article, I got really excited. Then I kind of got disappointed right off the bat because I was expecting quite a few things. There are only two cards that are getting nerfed, and that feels bad. But why don't we talk about those two cards, and then I'll kind of talk about nerfs and buffs a little bit just in the grand scheme of things. The first card up to get a nerf is Stealth. So before, this was 2 MP and make a friendly unit unblockable. What they're changing it to is it's going to become 1 MP, so that's a buff, cheaper is nicer, but it only makes that unit unblockable for 1 turn. And that overall really does hurt this card a lot. Like, yes, 1 MP is nice over 2, but only for 1 turn really stinks because a lot of times, people play Ada to get stealth in the big Resonate style decks so they can stealth out their Buki or Ko or what have you. And that's just a stack ability. And it just hits over and over and over, where this will only hit once with that stealth. And then, the Buku will be running into whatever unit is in front of her from there on out. So that makes it a lot weaker for sure. Yes, we'll probably see Big Resonate go back to more flight heavy, with hook shots, stuff like that. But flight is worse than stealth because there's anti-flight cards where there's not really that many anti-stealth cards. So overall, this is definitely a nerf, but I think it's good. And, the description for this of why they're doing this is to make things more interactable. And this definitely will make things more interactable since opponents can interact more in the air against flight units rather than stealth units. Beltway is the other card that is getting a nerf. So before it was 4 MP for a 2/5. It's now going to be 4 MP for a 2/3. So it does get 2 HP less, which means the body is less good, right? It's just going to die to a lot more, which I like that overall. And then when played, if a friendly purple unit other than self with MP cost 4 is present, return 1 random enemy unit with an MP cost of 4 or less to the EX pocket. That's getting reworded. The words are the same, but 4 or less is now 3 or less. That's the big nerf to this. So the body is getting hit a little bit, but only bouncing a 3 unit is a big cost because some decks don't even play 3 MP units or less. Right? And I like this change overall. I think that 4 Morgan, 3.5 Morgan has kind of needed a nerf for a little while now. And I think going after Beltway is pretty good because just having a unit that can bounce another unit is such a powerful effect because the opponent cannot play around that. There's no real way to play around Beltway. Where now closing the gap of what Beltway can bounce really does mitigate how good this card is, and maybe you don't even play this card. However, if the metagame does have a lot of 3 MP units, then yeah, you play this in your 3.5 Morgan. But if it's a metagame with not a ton of 3.5 or 3 MP units, then maybe you cut it out for something else. And I kind of like that. I like cards that aren't just an auto 3 of in every single deck, because that's usually the cards that are super powerful. So this kind of gives you more wiggle room to potentially have more expression in your deck building and everything like that. So I really like this change a lot. I like those 2 nerfs a lot because I feel like those 2 cards were maybe a little bit too powerful or a little bit not fun. Not saying that all cards need to be fun, but you couldn't really play around them and it just led to a lot of feels bad. So I think that's a good idea that they are nerfing those 2 cards. However, this is when I kind of talk about or rant about nerfs in general. I think it's very important for card games to have nerfs and balance changes. Have that be nerfs or buffs. I think both are really good. And what's beautiful about Teppen, like a lot of other card games, is that it's digital. That means you can just reword cards. You can give cards different stats. Unlike IRL paper card games such as Magic the Gathering, you can't reword things, right? Because you would have to do a printing press and all that. You can't really do that. So unfortunately, when Magic does feel like something is too overpowered, they have to ban something just outright, which can be really hard because people spent money. Where Teppen doesn't need to ban it, it can just nerf it. And usually with nerfing, the goal is to make the card less powerful but still playable. And that's the goal, unlike Magic, where they just have to ban something, which then makes it literally unplayable. So I like that Teppen is doing balance updates. And this is the third one, but this one is not that big. The Nergiante one was not that big. The middle one, the second one, was big. There's quite a few cards and quite a few hero arts. So I want more of that overall. Yes, I think you could go to the extreme and do too many balance changes, where like if you're doing balance changes every single weeks, you can kind of get like fatigued of it, like player fatigue of like not knowing what cards are good or bad anymore, or you're playing a deck and then it gets nerfed and then it feels bad, right? Too much is definitely an issue. But if you have too few, then the metagame gets stale, right? You have tons of mirror matches, or just a lot of your stuff is overpowered. And so your player base feels like they can't really do much besides if they're playing that one or two busted cards or decks. Overall, I feel like balance changes, you need to strike a good middle road where you can have too many or too few balance changes, and either are not good, where you want to do enough to keep your player base happy and the metagame good, but not enough where it's just happening all the times and players feel unsafe to craft cards. I think Teppen overall is doing a decent job with balance changes, but not quite there. They did talk about earlier in this article that they looked at data for win rates of heroes and cards and all that, and that's why they're changing these two cards. And I think that's good. Like, yes, look at the data, see what's performing good, see what is performing bad, and that's good measurements of what you should be nerfing or buffing. However, in that data, in my mind, I would assume that Chun-Li has a very good win rate, because that's what we see a lot in Champion Ranked and in the ladder and all that, and it's a super good deck, and maybe there's some busted cards that... So either maybe their data is showing that Chun-Li is not a problem and we're just seeing a very small sample size, or, in my mind, are they looking at older data? Because these two cards have been around for a while, and were kind of a problem before, where now the problem has kind of shifted to Chun-Li or other things. So are they kind of, they looked at the data, then they were a little slow to react, and so now are we kind of going to get maybe like a month or two down the line we'll get a Chun-Li nerf or so, which that kind of feels bad, because it's like, yes, it's good to look at the data, but this is a digital card game where people are playing constantly. There's games going on all times of the day, and, things get broken. And I'm not saying that, every day you should nerf things, because then that's just too much. But what I am saying is that the data that hopefully they're looking at is pretty up to date, and hopefully they're not waiting around for weeks on end to discuss the balance changes that they should be doing. Because in the meantime, if things are a little bit too broken, I'm looking at you, maybe Chun-Li, where then a lot of the player base will get a little, unhappy with. Now, I'm not saying that Teppen should look at what the players are necessarily saying to do the end-all be-all, because a lot of players will say, oh, this is busted or that's busted, and then give it a week or two and maybe it's not busted. So, I definitely don't think Teppen should be like, oh, well, we'll give the players everything that they want, because, they designed the cards. So hopefully they know a little bit more. However, sometimes the players are right, and sometimes you do kind of have to feed them what they want a little bit. Yet again, like I said before, it's a fine line of listening to the players, but not doing exactly everything that the players want. Going along with the thought of how frequent balance updates should be, they are saying that there is potentially another one in March. So maybe what I'm talking about, Chun-Li or the more recent problems in the metagame, maybe that's what March is going to be about. And so hopefully that is it, but we still have to play with all of February in more or less the same metagame, besides for these two cards getting nerfed. So that feels a little bad, but a month is not a super long time. Okay, my rant ends there. I got really excited when I saw that there was going to be balance changes, then a little disappointed that there were only two. However, there is some good stuff in this article of that there's going to be another balance change in March, that they are looking at data. So right now it definitely seems like Teppen might be doing a little bit too few balance changes that maybe take a little bit too long to implement. But you know what? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully the next one is better and maybe more cards, because yet again, maybe I would rather have it be too few and a little bit slower than all the time listening to the players, all the time and just nerfing things left and right because, like I said before, that can leave us feeling fatigued and unsafe with our decks. With all that being said, thank you all for watching. Hopefully the metagame isn't too stale and hopefully these changes are good and hopefully the changes in the future will be better. And you know what? I'm really excited what Teppen has to offer. There's goods and bads to everything. And balance changes is a very hard topic for card games to get right, but it is a digital space, so that means that Teppen has that luxury to play around with it a little bit more. But thank you all for watching and I'll see you all next time.